So, a very, very, very warm welcome to all of you. And I am Seeridma Bhatia. And we are back again to our learning classes. So, I hope you all had a great experience learning heads of income. That is your main question, 16 marks coming from different aspects, PGBP and capital gain especially. And I hope you learned, have a good time. And I hope you guys miss me. So, now we are back with our new session. So, the topic today is income of other persons included in SSE's income. But I know इसको commonly everyone says clubbing. And I know most of them skip this because thinking that it is not very important, it is a basic chapter who would devote time. So I understand that. And keeping that in mind, we'll try to cover it up. So we have two classes, one for set off and one for clubbing. We'll try to cover up at max in 1.5 class, and we'll give more time to deductions. Okay, so I'll make sure that this 3 hours is more than enough for you to just listen, understand, and revise this chapter so that you don't have to revisit the chapter again. But yes, it is not extremely important and critical as other sources as PGBP or capital gain, but you never know when a 1 mark adjustment or a 2 mark adjustment, which will impact your entire question, can come from these small chapters. Secondly, ICAI has this habit every year, they will have one question from any of a most random topic or a topic which students just think of कि इसमें से क्या ही आएगा, and then there is pop up cut to 6 marks question or a 8 marks question coming up. So sometimes the stars may align and may not align. So it's better to at least have a knowledge of the concept, and then you can apply it accordingly in the exam. So we can settle in and then we can start in another 1 minute. If you have anything to say, the things remain the same, that please be participative, please ask as many questions, please drop any feedback. If there is anything which you're liking, not liking, just let me know. So shall we begin? And I hope everyone is doing fine. One second. You can drop your queries on Zoom or also on the portal. And in case any of your query goes unanswered, you can ask them again towards the end of the class. Second, that's... Just a little... Just 1 second and we'll start. So can you please send a twist query so that I can know queries are coming or not? Final pay. Yes, yes. Because I'm not getting those queries. No data available are final wale pe. But just वो solve हो जाए and then we'll be good. Can someone please send a query on the portal to check whether I'm not receiving any query? It's just no data available. इंटरमीडिएट पे आ रहा है 553 का डेटा, बट फाइनल पे नहीं आ रहा सर। अब आ सो कृति, आई रिसीव्ड योर क्वेरी, परफेक्ट। आई एम सो सॉरी टू कीप यू वेटिंग। हेलो जीनी ओजाम। Perfect, perfect. So this we can now start with. So now, why this chapter? Why clubbing provisions? Why clubbing provisions are even required at the first place? The answer is very, very simple. Because India may there are different types of assessee. There is individual, there is HUF, then there is company, firm. Some has fixed rates of income, flat rates of income, flat rates of tax. Some has progressive tax, especially when we talk about people who fall in slab rates like individual, HUF, AOP, BOI. They all have flats, the slab rates, and slab rate means more the income, more the tax, less the income, less or no tax. So that's a very beneficial situation for tax planning for a lot of people. So what people used to do, they used to divert their income. They used to form transactions in a manner that it may not appear that the person who's the recipient is not actually the income owner. The income could be diverted, the asset could be diverted, or in a manner, people used to plan stuff like that, that what they are actually in the right of or what they are actually eligible for is being received by some other person. So suppose I am Mr. X. I am falling in a 30% slab. I am falling in a 30% slab. And now I have some interest income. So what I'll do, I'll tell the source of income to, instead of giving that in my account, give that interest income to my wife's account. So prima facie kya lagega? Since wife is receiving, it is her income. Since wife is receiving, it is her income. But actually, that is not the case. Actually, that is not the case because wife was falling under, say, 5% slab or zero slab. She was not having any taxable income. But prima facie, as per the bank statement, everyone will think that this is wife's income. Only when we dug in and deep inside and we study, we get that no, 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 this was actually the income of Mr. X and he has diverted it for tax saving purpose. So section 60 to 65 tell us all about clubbing provisions, all about clubbing provisions. So if you see, this is very, very simple aspect. Just one second. So section 6061 talks about transfer of income without transfer of assets and income arising from a recoverable transfer of assets. So basically, here when assets are involved, usse related income. Certain assets are involved, usse related income. Now, these provision of section 6061 will apply to all assessees, whether that person is individual, HUF, AOP, BOI, company, firm. Clubbing provisions will apply to all assessees in this case. So section 60 talks about transferring of income without transferring of asset, as the name suggests. कि इनकम ट्रांसफर हो गया बट एसेट ट्रांसफर नहीं हुआ, जस्ट लाइक एन एग्जांपल व्हिच आई गिव यू. एंड इनकम अराइजिंग फ्रॉम रेवोकेबल ट्रांसफर, ये क्या होता है, वी विल अंडरस्टैंड. तो ट्रांसफर हो गया बट रेवोकेबल है, दैट मीन्स इट कैन बी टेकन बैक एनी गिवन टाइम. दैट इज इनकम अराइजिंग फ्रॉम रेवोकेबल ट्रांसफर. इसके एक्सेप्शन दिया हुआ है सेक्शन 62 में. ठीक है, यहाँ फिनिश हो गया. देन वी मूव ऑन टू individual part say, where the income of other person is included in assessee's income, and we only have individual in that case. Individual के case में there is spouse का income, and then there is minor का income, and then there is son's wife का income. सिर्फ ये तीन लोगों का income would be clubbed in individual income. Son's ka income, daughter ka income is not getting clubbed. So only these three clubbing provisions will apply. If the relationship is not there, clubbing provisions would not apply either at the time of income or either at the time of transfer. ठीक है. So these three यानी खाली अगर if I'm an individual, so मेरे में at max किसका income can be clubbed? Either spouse or minor or son's wife. These three relationships only. Then as you move ahead, there is certain clubbing provisions when we talk about HUF, that when you are transferring to HUF, but that is also applicable to individuals. So technically, Section 64 talks about clubbing provisions in the hands of individual, and Section 60-61 talks about clubbing provisions in the hand of any person. The question can come from all of them. बहुत ही basic questions can come if you know the idea of it. So first, let's begin with Section 60 and 61. ये बहुत जल्दी, very quickly this will happen, and if you think that the flow is going very fast, you can stop me there. But few rules of the clubbing provision which you all have to remember is that clubbing provisions, the income which is earned during the year will get clubbed in the hands of other person in that year itself. First, whosoever is the recipient. So please be very careful when I'm using the term recipient, means जिसको income मिल रहा है. He's not the main person of the income or the main accruer of the income. Recipient. Then there can be a term which I'll be used very common, transferor. Who is transferring the asset? Transferee. जिसको asset मिला. ठीक है? These terms I'll use very often, and assessee means जिसके context में we are talking. जिसमें the context in whose we are talking, basically the person in whose hand the income would be clubbed. In whose hand the income would be clubbed. So these are basically the terms, so do not get confused. Okay. So now for the recipient, how will clubbing provisions happen? First of all, the income would be calculated in the hands of the recipient in the manner as if it is the income of the recipient. As if it is the income of the recipient. All deductions, exemptions in relation to that income would be given. Then once it is computed, then it would be clubbed in the hands of assessee. Then it would be clubbed in the hands of assessee. And it would be clubbed in the same head of income, which otherwise would have been taxable in the hands of recipient. Agar recipient ka it was a house property income, then it would be assessee ka bhi house property income. If recipient ka other sources income, then assessee ka bhi other sources income. That will go in the same manner. Second thing which you have to remember is, if you are clubbing income, then you have to club losses also. That ऐसा नहीं है कि only income of other person has to be included in the assessee's total income. Income includes losses also. Income include losses also. And then obviously tax recovery mechanism is there, which is given in Section 65, where obviously now suppose someone has deducted the TDS, he would have deducted the TDS in the name of recipient. So how you can claim the TDS which was deducted in the name of recipient while you are clubbing the income. So all these mechanisms are there. But as I repeat, provisions which are there under Section 60, 61 and 64 are only the clubbing provisions. Could say you will not apply clubbing. Even if you see that the person has diverted his income in a manner, he has given it to some other person, or maybe he has transferred an asset to some other person, whatever situation it is falling in. If those club situations or transactions are not falling under Section 60, 61 and 64, clubbing would not happen. Yes, you can apply any undisclosed income criteria or sections in it, but clubbing definitely not. Okay. So now first let's begin with income of other persons included in total income. जिसमें सबसे पहला is Section 60, transfer of income without transfer of asset. Now this is such a self-explanatory headline. Suppose I was having an income from godown. I told that person, he instead of giving the rent to me, you give the rent to my nephew. You give the rent to my nephew. Now, whatever the relationship between the recipient of the income and the main owner of the asset, which is me, does not matter. Whether the income is would be used for his benefit or not. Till the time I'm not transferring the legal title, but I'm just transferring the receiving title to another person, the income would be clubbed. The income would be clubbed. कोई matter नहीं करता when was the transaction, how was the mode, whether there was an agreement or not. Nothing matters. You have transferred the income without transferring the asset, clubbing will happen. But suppose, let me give you an example. Mr. A had 100 shares, ठीक है? He transferred 50 shares as gift to Mr. B, his one nephew, and 50 shares का only income to Mr. C, his another nephew. Now, the question comes, here that whether clubbing provisions would apply or not. Now 100 shares थे, ठीक है, so or say 100 debentures थे, whatsoever you want to say, उसका income किनका would be clubbed in the hands of A, both 50-50 का या only one का, किसका income? So the answer is only this, which is where the right of income has only been transferred and not the asset itself. See, when I'm giving someone as a gift, I have given the right of the asset to that person as gift. Okay, consideration is not there because the intention or the consideration here is love and affection, but it has been given as gift. Title has been given to the other person. So यहाँ पे clubbing does not come. यहाँ पे clubbing does not come. Just merely I've transferred the asset for free. No, यहाँ पे clubbing does not come. Clubbing come here where only the income has been transferred. Clear? Any doubt? Perfect. Now let's move to the next one. And I want answers from everyone. This will only go better when you all would be participative enough. समझ आया? नहीं आया? Okay. So next is second clubbing happens when income is arising from a revocable transfer of an asset. What is revocable transfer of an asset? Revocable ka when you will see the dictionary meaning, I think it means revoking, yani getting it back. So any transfer can be a revocable transfer when I have either the right on an income or I have a right on an asset or both. See, when transfer क्या होता है? Giving up the right to that asset. Technically, legal term में बोलो, giving up the right to that asset. Now, suppose Mr. A has made a transfer to B, but has attained the right on the income, with how the income would be applied, for whose benefit. Every right is in the hand of Mr. A. Or there is a provision that I can get this asset back anytime, as in A can get this asset back anytime. So when you even after transferring, you still hold or enjoy the benefit in relation to that asset, either through income or by getting that asset back at any time. By getting that asset back at any time, that is called revocable transfer. That is called revocable transfer. That means even if the transfer has been made, but it can be taken back anytime. Leases cannot be a revocable transfer. Uh, because or lease को you can say clubbing provisions will not apply because वहां पे the terms are different. वहां पे condition based terms are there. Whether you talk about operating lease or your financial lease, they are condition based terms. So when a certain payment happens, then only the transfer happens. So that is not a revocable transfer. Here you are showing that you have transferred it, but still you hold the right on it. That is a revocable transfer. So who is the transferor A? Who is the transferee B? B के legal title भी B के पास. Legal title is also in the hands of B, but B maybe has to divert the income coming from that particular asset to A. Suppose the house property was transferred. Suppose the house property was transferred, or suppose shares were transferred. So whatever dividend would come in the hands of Mr. A. So this is a revocable transfer. Hence, clubbing provisions would apply. Or whatever dividend would come would be used for the benefit of A's wife B. Then also it's a revocable transfer. Then also it's a revocable transfer. One exception of revocable transfer is that एक और दो हैं वैसे तो, one which is important is that if the revocation happens after the death of the beneficiary or the transferee, then it is not to be clubbed. Now suppose there was a condition that I am transferring an asset, I am Mr. A to B, okay? But I will get that asset back once B dies. Once B dies or after the death of B. Now you will say that A is getting the asset back, it's a revocable transfer. But the condition is it will only be revocated after B's death, after B's death. So if the asset is not revocable during the lifetime of the beneficiary, then it is, even if there is a provision to get revoked, then it is not a revocable transfer, or it is a revocable transfer, but not a transfer for clubbing provisions. Okay? But not a taxable transfer for clubbing provisions. So revocation का condition है, but condition is after the death of assessee, not a revocable transfer for clubbing provisions. ठीक है? Revocable तो है, but for not for the clubbing purpose. Clear? तो उस केस में क्या होगा? Once the things are proved, every income would be taxed in the hands of A. Suppose करो, let me give an example. A transferred the asset to trust, which is B. ठीक है? But the asset would be used for the benefit of C, who's the beneficiary, who's an orphan. Now, condition is that once after the death of C, A will get the asset back. A will get the asset back. Now, even if it is a revocation, there would be no clubbing provision, because the asset is being transferred back only after the death of the beneficiary. Only after the death of the beneficiary. Simple. एक बारी go through. If you have any doubt, then I'll move forward. And friends, section 60, 61 are applicable for all assessees. All assessees means HUF companies, koi bhi, agar, if they're transferring their income without transferring the asset, or the income is coming from a revocable transfer, it would be taxed in every assessee's hand. चलिए आगे. Now the interesting part comes. Is clubbing of income in the hands of individual. Students, again I'll say जो starting में कहा था. So whenever I talk about the provisions of section 64, यहाँ पे clubbing would apply only of these people income. Spouse, son's wife, minor child, and एक HUF. ठीक है? 64 subsection 2 में है HUF. Spouse में या spouse का remuneration club होगा. I'll go deep into it, don't worry. Any asset transferred to spouse without consideration, or asset invested in business, या any asset transferred to third person for the benefit of spouse. ठीक है? Similarly, son's wife में there is when asset is transferred to son's wife without consideration, WC लिख रही हूँ. ठीक है? Without consideration, or any asset transferred for the benefit of son's wife. आपने ट्रांसफर किसी को और की है, बट बेनिफिट फॉर सन्स वाइफ. ठीक है? एंड सन्स वाइफ की बात हो रही है. अगेन having said that, son ka income would not be clubbed in the hands of the father or the mother. Daughter ka income would not be clubbed in the hands of the father or the mother. Son-in-law, son-in-law ka income would also not be clubbed. Only daughters-in-law ka income is to be clubbed. Then minor, anyone who is of the age of less than 18, unka income would be clubbed. And HUF mein, when you are transferring the asset to HUF, is for no consideration. Okay? Without consideration. Okay? Tab or in advocate consideration, then the clubbing provisions has happened. This is just the gist of it, and you don't have to worry about anything more. Now, यहाँ पे थोड़ा small points है which we'll cover. First of all, let's talk about clubbing of minor's income. Shall we? Okay. Now, who is the minor? Who is the minor? Any person who is of the age of 18 or below. 18 or below, that is the minor person. अब क्लबिंग कब तक होगी जब तक that person is a minor, but कौन सी income? Any income which the minor is getting. Maybe any income on his birthday, any income through any occasion, any income which the minor is getting would be club. बट क्लब किसके साथ हो गया? माइनर के तो दो पेरेंट्स होते हैं. माइनर के एज इन दो देयर इज मदर एंड फादर. सो द पेरेंट हुज इनकम इज हायर, उस unke saath clubbing would happen, whose income is higher. So if my income is higher, then the clubbing provisions will happen in my income. If my spouse's income is higher, it will happen in the spouse's income. But this has to be done in the first year of clubbing. This has to be done in the first year of clubbing. That means suppose today the income is getting clubbed. आज किसका ज्यादा income है? The income would be clubbed in that parent hand. Now going forward, it would be clubbed in the same parent hand. Even if at a later stage my income increases, going forward, it would be clubbed in the same parent hand. Only if the assessing officer think that no, it should be clubbed in other parent's hand, then only it would be clubbed. Otherwise, it will continue to get clubbed for the subsequent years also in the same parent hand. ऐसा नहीं है 1 year it is getting clubbed with Mr. X, then Mrs. X, then Mr. X, Mrs. X. No. So excluding minor income, जिसका income is higher, उनके साथ the income would be clubbed. Now you will say, suppose the parent is a single parent, as in either father is maintaining the child or mother is maintaining the child. So whosoever is maintaining the child, in that case, that person's would be the one with whom the income is clubbed. And clubbing provisions would apply to your adopted child also and stepchild also. So start करें. But before going on to let's see. कहाँ चला मैं? The clubbing thing, one exception which you all have to know is very thankful on a system. I'm sorry. Exception is that no clubbing will happen if the person is having or the child is having that income from the manual work. From the manual work. Now, suppose the person is in a child actor, he's getting an income that would not be clubbed. See, why clubbing provisions are there? I told you at the beginning of the class, so that people do not divert the income. People do not divert their income. Many people, children के नाम पे क्या करते हैं? They start FD or they start purchasing shares, demat account, and then they do the transaction in them. So naturally, we believe that minor का खुद से तो कोई income नहीं है, right? So this income is only of the parents, and they are diverting in the name of the minor to reduce the taxes. वो all income would be club. And guys, asset club नहीं होता, income club होता है. Asset does not get club, income gets club. So if you're getting anything from the manual work, that would not be clubbed. Similarly, anything from the skill talent, he once India Got Talent or any dance show, and he got a prize from there, that would not be clubbed. Or he went to Crorepati and वहां पे he won some amount, that would not be clubbed. Secondly, a disabled person disabled child income is not club. Disability में है, so that is not club. Now, अब suppose करो, Mr. X had a son, Mr. Junior X, ठीक है? He went to India's Got Talent and वहां से he won a cash prize of 10 lakhs, ठीक है? Now, this is a winning from any game show or any dance show, ठीक है? 10 lakh is an income, but this would not get clubbed here. But now Mr. X did what? Mr. X took this 10 lakh, deposited it in the bank as FD, and now from that FD, interest is coming. Now from that FD, interest is coming. है कौन सा? ये वाला income, 10 lakhs वाला income. But अब क्या हो रहा है? From that FD, interest is coming. Now whether this interest would be clubbed in the hands of Mr. X or not, because FD has been opened in the name of Junior X. The question is whether this interest would be clubbed in the hands of Mr. X or not. Yes or no? Friends, answer whether this income would get clubbed or not. So Ginny says no. Okay. Any other answer? Kriti says yes. Okay. So technically, this income would be clubbed. So the idea is person having anything from the skills not to be clubbed. But after skills of that income is being utilized for earning more income, that here would be clubbed. That here would be clubbed. This is not accretion of an asset or anything, but this is just an income coming from a child or income of a child, which is not of a skill, manual labor, etc., and it should be clubbed. Skill wala income is not getting clubbed, but skill से कोई income आया which is further generating an income, that would be clubbed. क्योंकि minor में simple rule लगता है all minor incomes have to be clubbed except two. Clear? So this can come as a small question in your exam. Hello, perfect. Now we move ahead with. I hope the screen is visible, right? Acha, हाँ, sorry, one thing is very, very, very important left. Sorry. Once the clubbing is happening, once the clubbing provisions has happened, then 1500 tak you get an exemption. 1500 I know is not a very big amount to say, but 1500 rupees tak you get an exemption in a way. Suppose Mr. X has income from A and B. Dono, A is son and B is daughter. Mr. X is the father. Now in X hands, the income is getting clubbed. A is having an interest income on FD of say 30,000 rupees, and B is having just an interest income on FD or say dividend income of shares of say 1,000 rupees. Okay. Now clubbing would happen. 30,000 will also get clubbed. 1,000 would also get clubbed. Now for each child, Mr. X is allowed an exemption under section 1032 of 1,500. Or the income whichever is less. यहाँ पे अब you will not say 30 plus 1 31 करके minus 3,000. Why I wrote this as an example कि 1,500 is per child Just because मेरे दूसरे child का income is less than 1500, I will not claim total 3000 as exemption. वो please exam में do not do that. Return form में तो होता नहीं, but exam में do not do that mistake. So यहाँ पे 28,500 would be taxable and यहाँ पे nil would be taxable. ठीक है? So either 1500 or 1000. This exemption is given under section 1032. But that being said, this exemption is not available when you are exercising the option of staying under section 115 BAC. That is as per new scheme if you are paying the tax. No exemption as per old scheme if you are paying the tax, then only the exemption would be there. Chalo, now let's go next point पे, which is now coming to the spouse. Child वाला थोड़ा different था, so इसलिए I did it firstly. First is that spouse income would get clubbed in the hand of the spouse individual if it is coming from remuneration. If it is from a remuneration अब remuneration किसको मिल रहा है? Spouse को. Not the individual you're talking about. Remuneration is being received by spouse from a concern. Of which concern? We have to see that. In which individual has a substantial interest. In which individual has a substantial interest. But यहाँ पे interesting thing is spouse is getting this remuneration. Now, spouse can get a remuneration by whatever name you can say. It can be commission, fees, salary, whatever name. So, there is a firm or a company or a concern who is paying remuneration to spouse, but it will get clubbed in the hands of individual if individual has a substantial interest here. An individual को आप SSC भी कह सकते हैं. And this is how you have to write it in the exam also. If you'll have the image, you will write it clearly. Okay. So, but the question is, why? Why would remuneration be clubbed? It's very simple. So suppose an individual has a very substantial control in a concern. Now that concern wants to give individual the salary. Okay? But individual say, don't give the salary to me. It would be taxed at a higher rate. Give it to my spouse. Give it to my spouse. Let's so my spouse is her giving a consultancy, and let's give that money to my spouse as salary. एक ही घर में तो it is coming. It's coming in one house. We don't care. Or concern का profit शायद you have to change in a manner and you show it to spouse. अब ध्यान से let me try to explain you how the two provisions can come into picture. First would obviously be clubbing provisions, which we are studying under section 64, subsection 1, clause 2. If you cannot remember the clause, at least remember section 64, subsection 1. ठीक है? Clubbing provisions. Now, individual के hand में it would be club because individual diverted in a way his income or use his manner to get an income from a concern, but it was given to spouse. Perfect. So it would get clubbed. And from the concern's perspective, if I'm a concern co-auditor, suppose this is a firm and I'm firm co-auditor, and I see that the person has been given a remuneration, the firm has given a remuneration to a spouse, I can say that this can result in a disallowance under section 48, subsection 2 in the hands of concern. Now try to relate. How? Because concern, this is what is expected from you as a CA. Because firm made a payment which was unnecessary or which was over and above to a person which was not required, right? Or which was not resulting in any direct benefit to the firm. Right? So 48(2) disallowance can also be attracted. So be very careful in applying all these provisions. Now question is, what is a substantial interest? What do you mean by a substantial interest? It is same. See, substantial interest term you will see in a lot of sections. In a lot of section, you will see substantial interest in 48(2) also. So please be careful and remember, वैसे generally it is everywhere 20%, but just remember कि कहीं पे different substantial interest is not there. So substantial interest is the interest where the SSC in the concern has 20% or more of the voting power or 20% of more of the profit sharing. Of the profit sharing. If it's a company, we'll talk about the voting power. If it's a other than company, we talk about the profit sharing. But assessing himself or his relative, that is husband, wife, brother, sister, or any of the linear descendant and descendant. So let's talk about a firm XYZ Associates. Okay? Now here, Mr. X, Mr. Y, and Mr. Z are three partners. X and Y are brothers also. Okay? X owns 15%, Y owns 30% sharing, and Mr. Z is third party who's a friend who owns 55%. Okay? Now, if you will not remember कि substantial interest में तो brother and sister and husband and wife and linear ascendant and descendants can be seen, you will see कि XYZ में Mr. X का तो substantial interest is not there, so clubbing would not happen. No, you have to see always that if the Sesi or his relatives combined has in a concern a substantial interest. Now, when I see X and Y का combined करके, they have a substantial interest because they have a 45% profit sharing. 45% profit sharing. So XYZ associate becomes a concern in which the assessee or his relatives have substantial interest. Now suppose XYZ associate is giving a remuneration to Mrs. X, who is nothing but just a transaction of every month 30,000 rupees. Every month 30,000 salary they are showing. So now this salary will get clubbed in the hands of Mr. X, who is the assessee, not Mr. Y, but obviously the assessee who's the spouse, because relationship is important. Clubbing में relationship, concern, substantial interest, and remuneration. ये तीन चीजें if there section 64 get applies. But suppose if you prove that Mr. Mrs. X was getting a salary because of the qualification. She was a well-read, topper of an MBA, and she is qualified enough to give the consultancy, and that's why you're paying a salary. Then clubbing would not apply. Then clubbing would not apply. Simple sa reason, right? If she has a qualification, you're paying directly for it, then clubbing does not come into picture. बट सपोज करो किसी ने मुझसे पूछा था दैट सपोज मैम दोनों का सब्सटैंशियल इंटरेस्ट है एंड दोनों आर रिसीविंग द सैलरी. अब दिस इज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग केस. सपोज X, Mrs. X and Mr. Z. X, Mrs. X and Mr. Z are a partner in a firm, each having 1/3 share. In a firm, now firm is paying salary to Mr. X also, Mrs. X also. अब the question is substantial interest तो है, दोनों का है. If I see from the perspective of individual, Mr. X, then there is a substantial interest and his wife getting the remuneration. If I see from the return of Mrs. X, then there is a substantial interest and Mr. X is getting a remuneration. So first of all, if it is qualified, no problem. But if they are just getting it for no reason, for no justification, then clubbing would be attracted. A clubbing would be attracted how? Suppose Mr. X is getting a salary of 5 lakhs, Mrs. X is getting a salary of 6 lakhs. So how will now clubbing would apply? If both are receiving the remuneration, then clubbing would happen in the hand of the person where other income is higher. Now suppose other income of X is 10 lakhs and other income of Mrs. X is say 4 lakhs. So 6 lakhs would be clubbed in the hands of Mr. X. Mr. X. Got it? So you have to be very careful seeing the provisions. Other provisions, question the case padke, you are getting confused. Write it down, make a diagram and see what is there. Substantial interest mein do not forget to take the relatives. remuneration may do not see forget to see whether the person who's receiving is qualified or not, and then see अगर दोनों को मिल रहा है, this can be situation can come, then you have to see not who is getting the higher income, but ultimately whose other income is higher, whose other income excluding this income is higher. Check this. If you have any doubt, I'll repeat it again. चले? Sure, I'm not in a rush. कहीं पे भी कोई confusion है, please read it, go through it once. You want to draw it. छोटे छोटे points है. अच्छा, someone asked again a question. Ma'am, my fiance is getting an income from a concern where I have a substantial interest. Whether clubbing would apply? Now, ऐसे interesting questions actually come. So there was actually a case in regard to this back in the years 1960s, etc. You do not have to remember it. So the question, whenever clubbing we are talking about, especially when we talk about individuals, where relationships are very important. When we talk about minor, when we talk about spouse, when we talk about spouse, son's wife, relationships should subsist. So if you're not in husband and wife, clubbing does not come. So if a person is getting any income because of he or she being a fiance, you cannot put clubbing provisions into picture. You cannot. So the main things are relationship also should is very, very important, and therefore there are a lot of landmark rulings in relation to this. Any doubt when we talk about spouse? Guys, participate, please. I know the topic is easy, simple, and most of you all know it, but please participate.
And whether my messages are not reaching to you?
It is reaching. Who is this?
Ginny.
Ginny, last I did not receive any message. Yeah, no doubt I received. I received.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so next, Kriti has asked that whether when you are not clubbing it at all, will it mean it will not be taxable if I talk about minor? No, so it would definitely be taxable in the hands of minor. A return form has to be done, TDS would be deducted. So not getting clubbed does not mean it will not be taxable at all. Okay. I know in this chapter also, this can be actually be covered in 1 hour also. But I'm going a bit slow so that sat you can read the provision and it is done and dusted there only. अभी क्वेश्चन करते हैं quickly. Binu holds shares carrying 33% voting power in Yama Private Limited. Mrs. Babita is working as an accountant in Yama Private Limited, getting an income of 360. Computed matlab ye final income hai which you have to consider. Without any qualification in accountancy. Now, this is a indication that clubbing has to happen. Mr. Binu also received 32,000 as interest on securities. Mrs. Babita owns a house property which she has let out. Rent received is itna. Compute the gross total income. Now, simple. Binu ke case mein you have added 32,000 पहले जो उनका main income है, and 360 is the income which is getting clubbed. And Babita ke case mein no. And obviously, this is very unsaid that if the income is clubbed in the hands of the other assessee, that is the main assessee, it will not be taxed again in the hands of Babita. So, एक income would get taxed only in the hand of one person, right? So, यहाँ पे income from salary for Babita becomes nil. She's only having income from house property where you give 30% standard deduction, and final income from Babita is 54,600 and final income for Mr. Binu is 392. Got it? Next, now we come to this is an important section. Why this is an important section? Because it has small points. Income arising to the spouse. Again, the income is for a spouse. From the asset transferred. अब पहले जब हम section 61 पढ़ रहे थे और 60 when we were reading, it was the asset was not transferred or the asset was transferred in a revocable transaction. ठीक है? Now यहाँ पे there is no revocacy or there is no not being transferred. Asset is transferred. The legal title has been given to the wife. But the asset was transferred without advocate consideration. The asset was transferred without advocate consideration. So now A, suppose give a suppose give jewelry or say shares to B. A is husband, B is wife. Now B के हाथ में nothing is taxable as per section 56 to 10 because anything received from relative and A is husband, nothing is taxable, right? But when the asset is transferred as gift, this is true. यहाँ तक तो we all know other sources में हमने पढ़ा था. But at the same times, my friend, whatever that shares are having an income that income gets clubbed in the hands of A. Why? Because this was given as a gift. This was given without consideration or without advocate consideration. Advocate consideration means suppose you are transferring a shares of 3 lakhs, but you are showing consideration being received of say 50,000 just for the sake of showing consideration is received. That is not consideration received. Clubbing would apply. But iski heading mein whenever we will be reading this heading, income arising to the spouse from an asset, यहाँ पे always write other than house property. Other than house property without advocate consideration. अब you will say कि ma'am other than house property means house property if you're transferring for free of cost the clubbing provision would not apply. No, I'm not saying that. There is a separate provision when you transfer an asset to spouse without consideration or without for the condition to live apart, then the house property, even if transferred, is considered to be not transferred, and the transferor is considered to be the deemed owner as per section 27. So clubbing IIND because ownership as per the income tax law is still deemed to be of A. So again, I'll repeat, please ध्यान से सुनना. When I'm talking about transferring of any asset, section 64 applies. But if I'm talking about transferring of any asset without consideration, section 64 applies. But if I'm talking about transferring of asset without consideration, which is a house property, then section 27 applies. दोनों cases में income is getting taxable in the hands of A, but here it is getting taxed as a deemed owner, and here it will be taxed as a clubbing income as per section 64. ठीक है, an income clubbed as per section 64. So please remember, spouse and house property, both things are there. Section 27 has to be applied. Section 27 has to be applied, but other assets are there. Then you have to apply your section 64 ka provisions. No one will say that love and affection is a consideration. No, it is not an advocate consideration. Love and affection is not to be considered as an advocate consideration. And again, the question always you have to remember is that the relationship of husband and wife must exist between the transferor and the transferee at the time of transfer as well and at the time of accrual of income as well. Income club hoga. Asset ka amount is not getting clubbed. It is exempt in the hands of recipient as per section 56 to 10. The income has to be clubbed. And income club करने के लिए जब asset transfer हुआ then also husband and wife should be there, and when you're earning the income then also husband and wife should be there. So suppose I've transferred an asset to my fiance and now later on she's having an income, then clubbing would not apply because at the time of transfer husband and wife relationship did not subsist. And husband and wife ka relationship is important, okay? And transfer, obviously इसमें indirect direct transfers भी आते हैं, cross transfers भी आते हैं. I'll explain you how what is that cross transfer. But concept clear? But two exceptions are there. One exception is treated income. And second exception is transfer for separation or living apart. Living apart का तो clear है. If I'm transferring any asset because of alimony or because of that settlement, because of divorce, then the income will not be clubbed. It would be taxable in the hands of transferee spouse. Simple. And accreted income. Accreted income क्या होता है? If any income which is coming from accretion of the transfer asset, it is not to be clubbed. Now suppose husband gives certain properties to wife. The income of the properties has to be included in the income of husband. But if wife utilizes that income to acquire further property, the income of further property will not be clubbed. For example, let me give an example. Mr. X gifted shares of a foreign company to his wife. Now, a foreign company issued bonus shares to the wife and paid dividend of suppose 50,000, including 10,000 of bonus shares. ठीक है? Now, dividend total 50,000 मिला, जिसमें से 10,000 of bonus shares. 40,000 will be accessible in the hands of the husband, but dividend which is of say 10,000 will 40 dividend would be included and 10,000 would not be included because that is for the bonuses. That is of the bonuses. Clear? So accreted income will not be clubbed. Only the income which is coming from the transferred asset would be clubbed. Remember that.
Ma'am,
Yes.
suppose there are husband wife and husband earning income and file return, and the wife is a housewife, and husband gives household के लिए
Daily kharcha.
yes, and
Daily
wife
maintenance.
savings some money and use the money in the घर खर्च में यूज किया, तो जो मनी सेव की तो वो सेविंग वो वाइफ की यानी इतनी इकट्ठी हो जाए कि वो बाद में उसकी एफडी कर दे, यानी एक सिचुएशन क्रिएट, यानी थोड़ा दिमाग में चल रहा है वो बता रही हूँ.
This is true.
तो हाँ,
But
तो
it's
उसको इंटरेस्ट आएगा, तो वो क्या हस्बैंड को क्लब होगा?
तो इसमें केस लॉज है कि if some property is purchased from the maintenance expenses which is given by the husband to wife, then clubbing is not to be applicable. See, the intent of clubbing is always that you are having a transaction in your mind so that you can transfer the taxability to some other person, right?
Yes.
Intent अभी तक जितने भी sections में हमने पढ़ा, it is that आपका intent is कि taxability transfer हो जाए and मेरे हाथ में tax ना हो. अब सब why I'm यहाँ obviously love and affection can be one thing of giving an asset, but why people do it? कि prima facie appear हो that some other person is earning that income, right? So
Hmm.
that is the main intent. But when you are giving someone the daily expenses, daily maintenance, and they are basically aggregating it all into saving and then earning that income, the intention was not to evade tax. Intention was never there. So clubbing, like in such situations, do not arise. So यहाँ पे
Okay.
कोर्ट रूलिंग्स भी है कि अगर इससे कुछ इनकम हो रहा है, वी कैन नॉट प्रोवाइड द क्लबिंग प्रोविजंस इनटू इट. या अब वो एक्सेप्शनली हाई अमाउंट नहीं होना चाहिए. And you
Hmm.
will say कि ये तो daily maintenance है. जब किसी को your if the husband is paying every month 10 lakh rupees basic maintenances के लिए, then basically as per the
Hmm.
status you have to explain that this is a justified maintenance amount. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Intent जहाँ गलत होगा, law will catch hold of you.
Yes, ma'am. And
Perfect?
ma'am, if husband does the FD in the name of and the in the mind of the husband, there is no related to tax saving or evasion
I get
anything.
that, but वो taxable हो जाएगा कैश गिफ्ट की क्योंकि देखो गिफ्ट लव एंड अफेक्शन इज ऑल्सो वैसे तो नॉट एन इंटेंट ऑफ डूइंग एनीथिंग of tax evasion, but love and affection is not considered as consideration that would be taxable.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay, clear, ma'am. Thank you.
good question. Anyone has any other doubt? चले आगे. Okay. So now इसी में there is one more thing, something in relation to this where the amount is invested in the business of the transferee. So instead of giving to the transferor, you are investing in the business of transferring. Suppose A gave cash or the amount has been invested directly by the wife, Mrs. A को he gave the cash. अब that is invested in business. अब business से जो income आता है that is profit. Right. So income has to be clubbed always. I told you asset is not clubbed. Income is clubbed. So now profit has to be clubbed. Profit directly will go to A. Now the question is, अगर सारा sorry, Sara fund, Sara business is funded by A, then so everything gets clubbed. But suppose इस business में a lot of money goes and A has given थोड़ा सा amount, then how would you consider the clubbing provisions? The business को चलाने के लिए you need a lot of fund, right? But how clubbing would apply, because ultimately profit is the income of the business. The question जहाँ पे everyone gets stuck is how the clubbing provisions will apply when business is running from multiple funds. Mrs. A के खुद के funds or the funds provided by A. So इसमें there is a basic thing which they have come to a conclusion that whatever income has to be clubbed. Suppose in this case the profit has to be clubbed. Pro rata basis में club it. Pro rata basis में you club it. A pro rata basis means कि total business में अगर 10 lakhs लगा है, if total business में there is 10 lakhs का investment and 2 lakhs is from husband, तो 2 by 10 करके whatever the profit is coming, club it. But the question is when on which date you have to see the investment of. Now suppose business में तो daily funding goes, so the proportionate has to happen as per the balances as on first day of the year, opening balances. अब वो उसमें से विड्रॉ हुआ whatever is happening, जो भी first day of the year पे there would be the balances, you have to consider that. For example, let me start it with like opening capital था Mrs. B का business में 5 lakh rupees, ठीक है. Opening capital was 5 lakh. Profit earned during that year was 1 lakh. Total 6 lakhs हो गया. ठीक है. This becomes closing capital. Simple सा रखेंगे. ठीक. Next year, in the middle of the year, Mrs. B took certain funds from his husband to run into the business. सपोज 3 lakhs were taken, ठीक है. अगेन प्रॉफिट हुआ ऑफ से 2 lakhs. क्लोजिंग कैपिटल हो गया 11 लाख. विल क्लबिंग प्रोविजन अप्लाई इन ईयर 2? The answer is no. The answer is no because we have to take the funds as on the first day of the year. Or first day of the year में 6 lakhs में there was nothing which was provided. There was nothing which was provided by the husband. Clearly it is written you have to pick up the funds as on the first day of the year. So next up, अब आएंगे जब next year में तब clubbing आएगा. Let's see how. Sorry for my bad handwriting. Year 3 में when we come. Now year 3 में closing opening will be 6 lakhs, 11 lakhs, sorry. ठीक है. And then next profit has come to suppose 4 lakhs. Total हो गया capital of that year. No one is withdrawing, no one is getting anything. It is just getting invested in the business. 15 lakhs. Now the question come, clubbing would come. Yes, in year 3 clubbing would come. What clubbing would come? 4 lakhs में से profit has to be clubbed 4 lakh, right? 4 लाख में से टोटल इन्वेस्टमेंट कितनी है? ओपनिंग देखेंगे 11 लाख है. इस 11 लाख में से हस्बैंड का कितना है? 3. हस्बैंड का कितना है? 3 lakhs which he invested in the last year, but it was invested in the last year middle में. So now how much amount has to be clubbed in the hands of the husband is 4 into 3 by 11 which is almost 1.1 lakhs. ठीक है. आप समझ आया. इवन इफ यहाँ पे इन्वेस्टमेंट थी बट ओपनिंग में इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं थी, क्लबिंग नहीं आया. नेक्स्ट ईयर में क्लबिंग जुड़ गया. So question can come like this. So इसी basis पे quickly do this question of Mr. Rahul. Do not see the answer. This is very easy. Do not see the answer. बस focus on the years. कौन से years का data है? Your question में year is previous year 24-25. तो बस उस पे focus करके clear फटाफट do the question. Preeti has a very valid question, ma'am. Income from an asset which is transferred to a friend without consideration or in aggregate consideration is not to be clubbed. Yes, clubbing provisions would not apply, but friend के हाथ में taxability provisions would come under section 56(2)(10) because friend से कुछ मिलना other than the occasion of marriage is taxable, right? So friend के हाथ में gifting provisions taxable हो जाएंगे, but in the hands of the transferor, nothing would be taxable. Clubbing would not apply. That's why I'm saying again and again, even if you are seeing these same transactions getting applied to other relationships, no. Minor, spouse, son's wife. But these three things would attract clubbing provisions and HUF. Done the question? Next is transfer of asset for the benefit of spouse. अब यहाँ पे एसेट हमने स्पाउस को नहीं दिया. You're giving it to some other person. It can be an AOP, it can be any person basically. Suppose A transferred an asset to any trust, ठीक है? And the directions are whatever income is coming should be used for the benefit of my wife, which is B. Wife is B here. So since the asset is transferred through trust without consideration, A, ठीक है? And the income from that has to be used for the benefit of B, then in that case, so much of the income which is used for the benefit of B would be clubbed in the hands of A, would be clubbed in the hands of A. So, spouse के case में, what are the types of income would be clubbed? A, first is remuneration. B, of transferring of any asset without consideration or advocate consideration, that would be clubbed. C, amount invested in the business. And D, you can say amount invested in the business is basically part of the second only. And D, you can say transfer of asset for the benefit of spouse. Clear? Now, this is all about the spouse. कि spouse का income कब club होगा? But house property when transferred to spouse would not get into clubbing provisions because they are already covered under the deeming provisions of ownership, section 27, and deemed owner ban jayenge A, and he would otherwise be anyway taxable on that income. But when we talk about other such things, then clubbing provisions are applicable. And clubbing, where I told you first, it is calculated in the hands of recipient, as it is the only income of recipient. It is the income only of the recipient, and then it is clubbed. तो दोनों में फर्क है. Next, we move on to now clubbing of income arising to son's wife. If you have understood clubbing of income of the spouse, clubbing of income of son's wife is easiest. इसमें बहुत simple से there are two provisions only and you can cover it up. Let's do it. If first is income from asset transferred to son's wife. Again, any asset which is transferred to son's wife, be it jewelry when she comes into home, be it house property, anything. अब यहाँ पे house property भी है. अब you will say why ma'am house property है? Because house property में deeming provisions are only when we talk about the husband and wife. वहाँ पे if you see section 27, any property transferred to wife without advocate consideration में husband is considered the deemed owner or the individual is considered the deemed owner. But any property transferred to son's wife without advocate consideration is clubbing provisions. Please, bar I am saying this because sections, if you write and you will mess it up, answer would be wrong. Okay? So income from asset transferred to son's wife, where you have transferred any asset to son's wife directly or indirectly without advocate consideration, income from such asset is to be included in the total income of the transferor. अब वो कौन से father-in-law या mother-in-law जिसने भी ट्रांसफर किया, whosoever is the transferor. इसमें ये मत भूलना कि whosoever has the higher income. If father-in-law has transferred, the clubbing would happen in the name of father-in-law. If mother-in-law is the transferor, clubbing would happen in the name of mother-in-law. But again, the same situation happens that the relationship of father-in-law and mother-in-law or daughter-in-law should exist at the time of transfer also and at the time of accrual of income also. Similarly, income from any asset which is invested in business by son's wife, same, वो proportionate method would apply. And last, transfer of asset for the benefit of son's wife, same. अगर मैंने son's wife को ना देके किसी और को have transferred the asset and I have told them that the income from such asset would be used for the benefit of son's wife, then clubbing provisions would apply. Simple, simple, easy. इसमें कुछ there is nothing difficult or different. But again and again, I'm saying, and I'll draw it here also. Remuneration नहीं है. Son's wife के केस में remuneration is not club. Individual has transferred asset without consideration or inadequate consideration to house property transferred. ये है हमारा to spouse and this is to son's wife. House property transferred, section 27. Individual is the deemed owner, no clubbing provisions. Any other asset transferred? Section 64. Subsection 1. Okay. Son's wife में any asset transferred? Section 64. Subsection 1, clause 6. Or if transferred to any other person for spouse or for the benefit of son's wife, again clubbing provisions as per section 64, subsection 1, clause 7 and 8 है if I'm not wrong. ठीक है? Clear? I मेरा digipad थोड़ा अच्छे से नहीं चल रहा है, that's why maybe or the main writing. But is it clear? This is the crux. For confusion, you will not make in the exam, promise. You will not forget this thing. Sure. But we are left with two main topics now, cross transfers and transfer to HUF, which we'll start with after break. And uske baad we'll start with set of carry forwards. See you all after break. And I hope abhi tak everything is going perfectly clear. Thank you. See you all in a short break. Clubbing provisions, and abhi tak we have discussed very slowly, very shan se, aram se, section 60, which is where income is transferred without transfer of asset. Section 61, revocable transfer, where if the transferor still holds the right of right in the asset or right in the income, then the clubbing provisions would apply, and these two provisions are applicable for all types of assessee. Moving on to clubbing provisions for individual perspective, there is spouse, there is son's wife, there is minor, and then there is HUF. Jinka income would be clubbed in the individual. That is, whose income would be clubbed in the hands of the assessee who is individual. Spouse may remuneration if received without any qualification from a concern where the assessee has a substantial interest. Second, if any asset is transferred without consideration, house property goes section 27. Other assets goes under section 64, subsection 1, clause 4 for the clubbing provisions. Then there is any asset which is invested in the, any amount which is invested or any asset which is invested in the business, that also goes under this category. And then there is when you have transferred an asset to some other person for the benefit of spouse. Then there is transfer of asset to the son's wife. You can be a father-in-law, you can be a mother-in-law, but you are transferring it to the son's wife without consideration, clubbing provisions, or you're transferring it to some other person without consideration, but for the benefit of son's wife. Clubbing provisions would attract. Minor may we saw that clubbing provisions are by default there in the hands of the parent, either who is maintaining it, or if both are there, then in the hands of the parent who has a higher income, and then it goes on and on for the year. But you get an exemption up to 1500, and anything which is coming from the manual skills or talent of the minor, or if the minor is disabled, clubbing provisions would not apply. Simple. Now we move on to section 64, subsection 2, which talks about clubbing provision in case of HUF. अब क्या होता था? Again, people used to create an HUF for diverting their income. But HUF के पास assets कैसे आएंगे? HUF के assets are already individual के assets. So suppose individual created an HUF so that all the income from the property, suppose we're talking about a property, is now HUF ka ownership, and the income would get clubbed in the hands of, income would get taxed in the hands of HUF. But again, this is a way of diverting the income by creating an HUF and diverting the taxes. So clearly, if any individual transfers any asset to HUF without consideration or without advocate consideration, then the asset ka income would be clubbed in the hands of individual, even if he's a member. Even if he's a member, even if HUF will have an income from it, but as per section 64, subsection 2, the clubbing provisions would be attracted. Again, without consideration or without advocate consideration. Point number 1. और वो उसी member में club होगा who has transferred the asset. Point number 2, the clubbing does not end here. The clubbing does not end here. Clubbing still happens, suppose, on partition. अब partition में क्या होता है? The asset, now there's properties of HUF, right? So on partition, all the properties get divided among the members. All property gets divided. Now suppose there were 3 brothers and wife, so there were 6 members. A and A's wife, B and B's wife, and suppose karo A's son. 5 members were there. Okay? Now the property would get partitioned. Okay? It would be divided into everyone, and everyone will get the share of this property which was transferred. So A को भी मिलेगा, A's wife को भी मिलेगा, B's को भी मिलेगा, B's wife को भी मिलेगा, and A's sons will also get, because this is a property of HUF. So on partition, whatever income is coming from the partition property which was transferred by individual without consideration to the spouse, this shall be clubbed in the hands of A, that is the transferor. This will also be clubbed in the hands of A, that is the transferor. Reason being, it can be said that instead of directly transferring it to the wife, HUF person ने क्या किया? HUF बनाया, then HUF को break किया and then gave it to the wife, right? Because wife को if you transfer any property, clubbing provision would apply, right? So this person applied his mind, and what he did, he he made an HUF, then got partitioned it, and then gave the property as a hissa to the wife. So that's why, to cover up that transaction, partition pay, whatever the wife of or the spouse of the individual will get as a part of the property, income deriving from that would be clubbed in the hands of the transferor. Would be get clubbed in the hands of the transferor. Because most of the people don't understand this point and the logic behind it. I hope it is clear now. Sure? Vignesh, Ginny Oja, Pratik, everything is going. I think it is an easy chapter. एक बारी सुन लोगे, it would be more than sufficient. कहीं पे भी डाउट नहीं है? Perfect. Kriti, all okay? Super, super. ये सब क्लबिंग से बचने के लिए people came up with the concept of cross transfers. People are also very shana to evade taxes. Now what they did like this. So this is a very weird thing to do, but yeah. Now suppose cross gifts कह लो, cross transfer कह लो. Mr. X very well knows that if he will transfer anything to Mrs. X, clubbing provisions would be attracted. So what he did, he transferred something to Mrs. Y. ठीक है, and at the same time he made an agreement, and Mr. Y also know the same, that if he transfers something to Mrs. Y, then clubbing provisions would happen. So what he did, he transferred it to Mrs. X. So both were given on the occasion of marriage, so gift taxability does not came into picture. Now, technically, they made an arrangement in such a manner that instead of directly giving it to each other, the transfer to the wife, they made a transaction in a suspicious manner of an equal amount so that they do not get caught hold of. So they do not get caught hold of. पकड़े ना जाए. But when the court observed that the transactions are in such a way that, I'll even say the line of the court, that the transactions are interconnected and are parts of the same transaction in such a way that it can be said that it is circuitous method was adopted as a device to evade tax, the implication of clubbing provisions would be attracted. The implications of clubbing provisions would be attracted. Suppose same value को almost asset transfer करा, or whatever the situation. Suppose Mr. X gave 2 lakh rupees का shares to Mrs. Y, and Mr. Y gave 2 lakh rupees का debentures to Mrs. X. So whatever the income which is coming from debentures would get clubbed in the hands of Mr. Y, and whatever income is coming from the shares would get clubbed in the hands of Mr. X, because this is a clear case of evading the taxes to make an arrangement in such a mischievous manner, but showing that it is actually a part of the ultimate motive, which is evading the tax. Got it? Clear? Simple. So with this, we finish our concept of clubbing, and just like that, clubbing is just a story. If you divide it into a flow chart, you can quickly revise the clubbing provisions in just 10 minutes or 5 minutes. And I understand a lot of people think that this is not a relevant chapter because you obviously have a heap of important thing. But again, 1 mark, 2 mark adjustment, if you miss because of these small things, your entire 60 marks answer goes wrong, your entire effort goes wrong. So it's always ideal to have a knowledge of the subject and then attempt it accordingly. Okay. So let's do these one, two, three, four situations and then we can wrap up this chapter. So here we are talking about a question of Mrs. E, wife of Mr. F, is a partner in a firm. Her capital contribution to the firm as on 1st April 24 was 5 lakhs, out of which 3 lakhs were contributed out of her own sources and 2 lakhs were contributed out of gift from her husband. As further capital was needed by the firm, she further invested 2 lakhs on 1st May 24 out of the funds gifted by her husband. The firm paid interest on capital of 80,000 and share of profit of 60,000 for the financial year 24-25. Advised Mr. F as to the applicability of the provisions of section 64, subsection 1, clause 4, and the manner in respect of which the above has to be referred. First of all, the income to be clubbed, the proportionates we have to club, calculate accordingly. So there are two incomes. One is profit and one is interest. A profit में interestingly firm से profit मिल रहा है when at the first stage the income is exempt, so clubbed income would be exempt, so you don't have to apply that brainer here. Firm से any profit received is exempt. Second income is interest. अब interest is how much? 80,000. अब उसको proportionate कर लो upon the total capital upon में total वो अब total capital कितना लोगे guys? 7 lakhs, 3 lakhs, 5 lakhs कितना? Total capital for the purpose of the clubbing would be 5 lakhs, which is the starting of the year ka capital which you have to take. Beach wala capital you don't have to take. What next year would be considered? So 2 upon my 5 into 80,000, how much? $32,000. ठीक है, simple. Next करते हैं very interesting question. ये रहेगी profit will also club. And students, a question can come from all perspective, not only clubbing. उसमें recipient के हाथ में you can see the taxability कि whether section 56(2)(10) is coming, because whenever transactions are for no consideration or inadequate consideration, you have to be careful कि recipient पे भी there are taxability provisions and transferor पे भी there are taxability provisions. Clubbing provision in the hands of transferor and recipient में gifting provision. So you have to have a knowledge of everything. Oh, poor Jeannie. Just few days, I know. Very irritating. थोड़े दिन की बात है. Don't worry. Study in the day, enjoy in the evening. Okay. So
मैम
next,
एक्चुअली जब डीजे चलता है तो कुछ सुनाई नहीं देता.
I understand. Very tough. Noise cancellation headphones ले लो for 3-4 hours. थोड़ी देर के लिए. And then उसके बाद just 10-15 days more and then you can relax. And then maybe you will be also enjoying. ठीक है?
Okay.
Chalo. Next question. Mr. A has gifted a house property valued at 50 lakhs to his wife. House property, friends, house property, okay? Focus. Mrs. B, who in turn has gifted the same to Mrs. C, their daughter-in-law. The house was let out at 25,000 per month throughout the year. Compute the total income of Mr. A and Mrs. C. Question में Mr. A and Mrs. C है, Mr. B, Mrs. B पे मत जाना. Will your answer be different if the said property was gifted to his son? Now here I honestly want to hear what you people think. Question answer, read it again and then tell what is your thought on this. I want to listen. Prateek, Vignesh, come on. Ginny, come on, come on. What are your thoughts? Students, come on. What are your thoughts on this question?
Ma'am, the 25,000 will be clubbed in the hands of Mrs. B as uh, as she transfer the transfer to Mrs. C.
Okay. Good attempt. Good attempt. Prateek
And
has said transfer. Hanji. Continue, Ginny. Yes.
in the hands of Mr. A, I think it will not clubbing as the section 27 will come into picture due to house property.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, fair enough. थोड़ा सा है, but good attempt. Very good. Anyone has any other answer? Taxi in the hand of Mr. A as transfer for property for daughter-in-law. Okay. Priti. Okay. Any other point?
Ma'am, hello.
Yes.
Ma'am, Mr. A indirectly transfers the property uh, to C via the Mrs. wife, 50 value of 50 lakhs, and monthly rent 25,000 comes to annual rent of 25,000 into 12 is equal to 4 lakhs. Standard, we need to deduct standard deduction of 30%, and to net 2 lakh 80,000 should be taxable to Mr. A, I think, ma'am.
Perfect. Very good. Very good attempt. Very good, Vignesh. Very good, Ginny. First of all, for trying. Now, the question is simple. There, you can apply two things here. A has transferred the property to B, who's the wife, and then B has given it to C. Now, since ultimately it has been gone to C, and A is the father-in-law, it can be said that this provision is of indirect transfer, and hence clubbing provisions would apply, which is for the section 64, subsection 1, clause 6, when a property is transferred with or without consideration, without consideration or without adequate consideration to the son's wife, then the income from that is to be clubbed in the hands of A. And since rental income was derived, net of standard deduction, it would be clubbed in the hands of A. This is one answer, which is the easiest and the simplest way to answer. Second answer you can say, and obviously no provisions would come in the hands of C, no gifting provisions also, no section 56 to 10. Why? Because A is a relative of C. And relatives say kuch milna, specified relatives say something is received, that is exempt. Second provisions you can apply to make it complex and a bit detailed is when A is transferring to B. First of all, B is the wife, and any house property transferred to the wife is always when A remains the deemed owner. Now, since A is the owner, A is the deemed owner, then now anything again transferred by the owner, even if it is done by C, would be considered to be transferred by the deemed owner. Even if it is done by B, still would be considered to be transferred by the deemed owner. So any which way, when the transfer of house property was happening from A to the wife, it was deemed ownership provisions applicable and A was any which way taxable. And now when the transfer has happened to C, A still remains to be the deemed, A as a deemed owner still remains to be the transferor. And since now the property has been transferred without consideration to C, the taxability arises as per section 64, subsection 1, clause 6. यहाँ पे indirect transfer करके you made it. And यहाँ पे first you made it in this transfer A the deemed owner, and then as a deemed owner, if the transfer is, since the ownership is still in the hands of A, any transfer to son's wife without consideration would still be the income of the owner, that is the original transfer, that is A. Answering this way, you can maybe a bit confused while writing the clauses, so it's better to show it as an indirect transfer. Both are accepted. And if C is not the son's wife here, but the son itself, then no clubbing provisions get attracted any which way, because any transfer to son, whether directly or indirectly, does not come into the provisions of clubbing. Now, since the taxability was asked in the hands of both A and C, so you have to tell A may taxability provisions are happening of clubbing, and C may no taxability provisions are happening because of gifting provisions. Okay? Gift hai, but relative hai, it is exempt. So you have to tell that. Good, Jenny. See, till the time you will not participate, maybe you will not be able to get the error. So एकदम से confused नहीं होना question देख के, step by step read it and then answer it. Next, Mr. Korani transferred debentures of 100 each of Wild Fox Limited to his wife, Mrs. Rekha Korani, on 3rd of October without consideration. Okay. The company paid interest on 30,000 in September 2024, which was deposited by Mrs. Korani with Kartar Finance Company in October 24. Kartar Finance Company paid interest of 3,000 up to March 25. How would both the income be taxable? Simple. The interest would be taxable in the hands of Korani as clubbed income, because transfer of asset without consideration, any income arising from that asset would be clubbed, but any income arising from the accreted asset as an accreted income would not be clubbed. Clear? 3,000 would not be clubbed.
Come again with your answer, ma'am.
So any income, I'll write here, any income which is being derived from the asset which is transferred. Asset transferred was debentures. Without consideration, A is Korani and B is Rekha Korani, okay? Without consideration, the income from that would be definitely be clubbed. The income from that would definitely be clubbed, which is the interest of 30,000. But any income which is derived from as an accreted income, that is as a further investment of the clubbed income, would not get clubbed in the hands of the transferor. So 30,000 definitely would be clubbed, but 3,000 which is coming from the further investment of 30,000 would not be clubbed. 3,000 would remain to be the income of B. Clear, Vignesh? Perfect. Last two questions quickly. Mr. Rose, okay. Mr. Rose, out of his own funds, had taken an FDR for 10 lakh, bearing interest at 10%, payable half yearly in the name of his wife, Lily. Okay. Out of his own fund has taken FD of 10% in the name of Lily. The interest earned during the year is 1 lakh, was invested by Mrs. Lily in the business of packed spices, which result a net profit of 55,000. How shall be the interest on FDR and income from business be taxed? Prateek, answer. Come on. Ginny, you want to attempt?
Ma'am, here first Mr. Rose had done the FD in the name of his wife. Then the interest which is coming, the 1 lakh rupees is uh, clubbed in the hands of Mr. Rose, and the
Very good.
55,000 is accrued income, and it will uh, be the income of the uh, mm, uh, Mrs. Lily.
Very good. Very good. That would not be club. Had directly been invested in the business, then would have been club, but it is coming from an income which is coming from an asset, that is accretion of the transferred asset कि transferred asset का एक level up हो गया, उसमें से जो income आया उसको कहीं से further invest करके if any income is coming, that would not be club. But I again and again I'm saying, I gave an example of minor कि minor के talent से if some income is coming, not to be club. But minor के talent से if some income is coming and then that income is invested further, that is club. Because minor के case में the clear thing goes is that all incomes have to be clubbed except the talent income. ठीक है, so please be careful. ये मत हो कि उसमें बोलना कि मैम ये भी तो accredited income है, this should not be clubbed. No. ठीक है, when with accretion of assets का we are talking कि you transferred asset that is generating income, clubbing. You transferred asset that is generating income and now that income is generating further income, no clubbing.
Clear, ma'am.
Perfect. Very good, Jay. Very good. Vignesh, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Proceed.
Perfect. Last question. Naresh is a fashion designer having lucrative business. Very nice. His wife is a model. Naresh pays 10,000 monthly salary to her. The assessing officer, while admitting that the salary is an admissible deduction, in computing the total income of Naresh, had applied the provisions of Section 64, subsection 1, and had clubbed the income of salary in the wife of his of his wife in Naresh's hand. Discuss the correctness of assessing officer. First of all, if the business is there, the salary is getting there from the business of the assessee, and the salary is being given to spouse, obviously clubbing comes into picture. But if that income is because of the qualified talent of the spouse, then clubbing provisions does not come. So hence in this case, since there she is a model, and because of that being into a fashion designer, and she's getting the salary because of she being a model, 100% matlab it's justified, and clubbing will not be attracted. Okay, so assessing officer is wrong.
Ma'am,
When yes,
what is the meaning of lucrative business as you have told? Wow.
lucrative business means attractive, a very attractive business.
Okay.
It's going nice. It's going well. Lucrative profits. वो ऐसे वैसे okay, वो just an expression.
वो
ठीक
मुझे
है?
पता नहीं था उसके बारे में, इसीलिए.
No problem. So, one thing again and again I'm saying, if theory questions like these come, make sure whatever is asked in the question is clearly in the last lines of the answer. चेकर को बार बार ढूंढना ना पड़े. If they are talking about discuss the correctness of the action of the assessing officer, कहीं ना कहीं in the last paragraph it should be clearly written that the contentions of the assessing officer is not correct, or the actions of the assessing officer is not correct, and then only he will go and read your answer. Okay, okay, you have said it not correct. Then they will see कि okay, now you have applied the correct provisions or not. So please make sure that what is asked is clearly written in your answer sheets. कहीं बीच में लिख दिया, स्टार्टिंग में लिख दिया, ऐसे नहीं. ध्यान से, ठीक है? This is a tip to the questions. Sorted? Now take 1-2 minutes deep breath. We'll start quickly with our next chapter, which is your set off and carry forward. 2 minutes water break, no issue. Take 2 minutes का break, relax out, go through the provision, कुछ पूछना है, and then we start with set of carry forward. Okay, everyone settled down. Now let's start. Perfect. So now this chapter is again one of the very easiest chapter, aggregation of income, set off or carry forward of losses. I'll try not to go much technical today, and I'll try to restrict it into certain topics, which is of intra-head adjustment and intra-head adjustments. And then probably in the next class, we can pick up specific wise so that you can have eased situation. 1 second. Let me just quickly go through the provisions. Amalgamation का I will take it up next class ताकि fresh up होके start. LLP वाला भी. Okay, apart from that, I don't think so. इसमें there is something very, very technical involved. Speculation was this, I'll pick it up. Startup wala and all of these, okay. Perfect. So when I talk about students aggregation of income is like obviously you have to aggregate your entire income, and also along with that the incomes which are coming from the undisclosed sources of section 68, 69, 69AB, etc. That has to be considered. So income tax is actually taxed on the total income of this SE, right? So income has to be computed headwise and then it has to be aggregated to determine the total income. Now, while you can say aggregating the income under different head is reasonable, but the loss from one source or head may be set off against the income from other source of head so that the correct income can be determined, right? But when I talk about aggregation, that does not mean that total it all के okay, salary say 10 lakhs है, house property say minus 5 lakhs है, other sources say 3 lakhs है, so the net income comes to 8 lakh. We cannot say it as a mathematical concept कि head सारे heads का income added on and then you come to the net result. No, because income tax में there are certain provisions which restrict set off of losses against certain incomes or may allow them in a particular manner or to a certain extent, right? So aggregation, when I talk about aggregation of total income, we talk about it from a legal concept. खाली mathematically aggregate नहीं करना उनको, total नहीं करना, right? We have to see what are the income tax provisions in relation to it, how much loss is allowed, if it is allowed or not to be set off. So technically proper approach leke you have to aggregate. If the losses of that year is a lot, then they are carry forwarded always. They are carry forwarded, no loss as such is lapsed, right? So what are the three stages if I talk about set off of any losses? First, within the same head, that is intra-head adjustment. Then from different heads, that is inter-head adjustment, and then there is carry forward. When the losses are incurred in that year, first you will make an intra-head adjustment, then you will make an inter-head adjustment, and then you will carry forward it. And once it is carry forwarded, in general, it is only adjusted within the same head. The loss which is carry forwarded is adjusted in the same head. जिस साल लॉस इंकर होता है वो दूसरे हेड्स के पास जा सकता है. I'm repeating it in Hindi. Otherwise, next year, once it is carry forwarded, in most of the cases, it is adjusted in the same head only. Okay, so the first step when you incur a loss is intra-head and inter-head in the same year in which the losses has to be incurred in the same year. So if losses cannot be set off in the intra-head and inter-head adjustment, then they are carry forwarded, and this is the name of the chapter. Intra-head मतलब same head. अब जब भी कभी suppose करो, if you have any problem, you first consult it within the same house, right? Within your house. That is intra-head. Then if you do not get the solution, you go to other people to get help. So that is inter-head. अब कहीं से नहीं कुछ मिलता, then you carry forward it. Right? Then you carry forward it. And losses can come under all heads except salary. There can be loss from house property, there can be loss from PGBP, capital gain and other sources. Salary में बहुत ही किसी ने peculiarly point out किया था कि आ सकता है, but that is you don't have to go into the brainer of it. नहीं आता. So when I talk about, remember when we are talking about the loss under PGBP, by default it is to be segregated from unabsorbed depreciation, unabsorbed capital expenditure, unabsorbed scientific research, unabsorbed capital expenditure on scientific research, और unabsorbed capital expenditure on family planning. उन तीनों को अलग रखना है and PGBP लॉस को उससे निकाल के रखना है. Why so? Because there is no restriction on number of years of unabsorbed depreciation, scientific research का capital expenditure and family planning. ठीक है? उसके अलावा there are certain restrictions. This is just an introduction which I'm trying to give it to you. Certain restrictions are like you cannot set off the losses from undisclosed income. Undisclosed income found during search and survey. Suppose search हुआ, अभी you will see आगे, कुछ search हुआ, उसमें से some income got came up. You cannot adjust the losses which you have from search income. आपने income disclose नहीं किया, now that income is found, you can say कि adjust my losses. That is technically wrong. You cannot adjust any losses from virtual digital asset income. You cannot adjust any loss against the income from virtual digital asset, or you cannot adjust virtual digital asset ka loss from any income. That is not possible. You cannot adjust the losses from unexplained income. वो जो unexplained income है ना under section 68, 69 and all which we discussed in the first chapter, you cannot adjust the loss. You cannot adjust the losses against gambling activities. Or you cannot adjust the loss of gambling activity with anything. Also, you cannot adjust the loss against specified income of trust or institutions. ठीक है, ये सब बेसिक चीजें हैं, इसको माइंड में रख के नाउ लेट्स स्टार्ट विद इंट्रा हेड एडजस्टमेंट्स. ठीक है, एनी डाउट इन द इंट्रोडक्शन? कुछ पॉइंट है यू वांट टू डिस्कस? Perfect. First is set off under the same head, then set off of loss from one head against other, and then you will go forward. But mode of set off, कहीं mode of set off है कि पहले इस head से करना है, then इस head से करना है. No, there is no particular mode of set off. Then type SSC, whatsoever is beneficial to him, he will do that in that manner. Okay, there is no that if you have suppose house property loss, no one says that you have to adjust first with salary income or business income. It is totally up to your choice from which particular head you want to set off. Number one. Number two, set off is mandatory. You cannot choose to carry forward the loss which otherwise can be first set off. If you have profits, I don't want to set off the losses, I will carry forward it. No. If you have profits, you have to set it off. Okay? Loss of one source has to be set off against the profits of another source, subject to whatever exceptions are there. And ऐसा भी नहीं है कि you can choose to set off the loss partially. इतना नहीं कि I will adjust only 1 lakh, next year I will take it up. No. There is a basic thing, a mandatory set of losses. Yes, what is allowed is to you is which mode you want to choose. And third, you have to remember is current year losses have to be set off first. You may have, see, carry forwarded loss becomes the brought forward loss of the next year. But you have to choose to first set off the current year losses. All these points, please write it. Sath. Sequence, no sequence, mode, no mode, set of mandatory, current year losses has to be set off first. Second, no set off of losses from an exempted income. Now, suppose I have an income which is exempt, to loss hua. I cannot adjust the loss of an income which is exempt with any taxable income. That is technically not right. They say agricultural income ka loss, I cannot adjust it with my non-agricultural income because agricultural income is exempt. Set off is permissible from clubbed income. Yes, the SSC is entitled to claim set off of losses against the income which is there as per clubbing provisions. That you can do because clubbing provisions पहले आया वो आपकी income बन गया. Now you can set off losses with that. Definitely that you can do. Plus set off of losses का कुछ concessional tax regimes में there are certain restrictions when I talk about 115 BAB, BAC, BAD and BAE. वो unabsorbed depreciation losses का set off नहीं लेते, which you will understand in detail. I have told you also depreciation wala part. That is not allowed. That is not allowed. ठीक है, ये छोटी छोटी चीजें, दिस विल नॉट बी कवर्ड ऐसे चैप्टर में, सो प्लीज मेक श्योर दैट यू हैव पॉइंटेड आउट। यू वांट मी टू रिपीट एनीथिंग? Gambling, Kriti, is not speculation, Mamu. Gambling is uh, jua, like I went to casino and wahan pe I earned something. That is gambling. Speculation businesses are like more of an intraday trading. So I hope you will all remember these small points which are extremely critical for you to understand. और ये क्वेश्चंस आते रहते हैं माइंड में. So now we first move on to the intra-head adjustment. बहुत simple, very clear. Intra-head is same heads adjustment but from different sources. इसमें exceptions है. पहले general rule समझते हैं. Intra-head or inter-source, one and the same thing. So first is that suppose intra-head adjustment is very simple. Suppose I have house property 1 and I have house property 2. If house property 1 has a loss of say 3 lakhs and house property 2 has an income of say 7 lakhs, I can adjust it. I can simply adjust it and my net result under the head house property would be 4 lakh. This is called intra-head adjustment and I have to do it. I cannot directly adjust the house property 1 ka loss with salary income. First, I have to see within the same source. Within the same source. This is called same head में adjustment करना. But now there are certain impermissibility in relation to it. First of all, step by step चलते हैं. About the exceptions or the restrictions, you can say first of all is speculative business. If I have speculative business, the loss, I cannot adjust it with any other income. It can be adjusted only against speculative income. Only adjusted against speculative income. Speculative business loss cannot be adjusted otherwise, but only with the speculative income. So suppose I have intraday trading loss of say 4 lakhs, ठीक है, speculative business है, and I have loss, I have income from derivative trading. Derivative trading is a non-speculative business, right? Which is 5 lakhs. And I have a normal business loss also, say from manufacturing business, which is of say 3 lakhs. So this I can adjust. That is 2 lakhs would now be the net profit in PGBP and 4 lakh the loss would be there, but it would be carry forwarded till the time I have speculative income of it to adjust it to it. ठीक है, because अगर इंट्रा हेड में रिस्ट्रिक्शन है तो इंटर हेड में डेफिनेटली रिस्ट्रिक्शन है. इफ यू कैन नॉट एडजस्ट इट विद इन द सेम हेड, यू कैन नॉट एडजस्ट इट विद अदर हेड्स ऑल्सो. This is a common sense. ठीक है, so this would be carry forwarded and I will write 4 lakh carry forwarded for the next assessment year and net result from PGBP would now be 2 lakh. Got it? Same goes with section 35 AD. $35 AD में भी सेम है. $35 AD में the loss from the specified business. Specified और speculative में प्लीज ऐसे गलती मत करना. Specified businesses are those who list of infrastructure facilities, cold chain, etc. Remember 35 AD? So अब उसमें लॉस इज नेचुरल. फर्स्ट ईयर फ्यू इयर्स में लॉस इज नेचुरल. रीजन कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर होता है, राइट? सो कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर होता अलाउ होते हैं तो जनरली लॉस वुड बी देयर फ्रॉम द बिजनेस. सो एनी स्पेसिफाइड बिजनेस लॉस वुड ओनली बी एडजस्टेड विद स्पेसिफाइड बिजनेसेस, नो अदर बिजनेस. specified business income होगी, only that would be taken. So if I have suppose a loss from my 3-star hotel of 10 lakhs and I have a income from a hospital which is more than 100 beds of say 6 lakhs, and then I have income from manufacturing of say 7 lakhs. ठीक है. So now you will say कि मैम adjust हो जाएगा. नहीं, this is a specified business, this is a specified business. Hospital with more than 100 beds, this is a specified business. I can adjust these two. So net 4 lakhs of loss will be carry forwarded next year, and 7 lakhs would be the net result in PGBP. Got it? Even if I have business income, I cannot make an inter-source adjustment. Inter-source या intra-head. Intra-source मत लिख देना, ठीक है? Inter-source मतलब within the different source within the same head, और intra-head मतलब same head में. Next is LTCL, long-term capital loss. Long-term capital loss can be adjusted only with long-term capital gain. तो अगर मेरे पास long-term capital loss है of say 5 lakhs, short-term capital gain है of 4 lakhs, I cannot adjust it. 4 lakhs वो short-term capital gain taxable हो जाएगा, and 5 lakh would be carry forwarded. And once carry forwarded, intra-head restrictions and inter-head restrictions सब same apply होंगी. Intra-head ऐसा नहीं कि carry forward होने के बाद I can adjust the long-term capital loss with long-term short-term capital gain. No, intra-head adjustments would always remain. ठीक. और सबसे पहले current year loss, then brought forwarded losses would be adjusted. Once you go it to the next year, it is called carry forwarded. Once you bring it from the previous year, it is called brought forwarded. I know this is basic, but please remember all these terminologies, okay? So this cannot be adjusted. Now, for example, there is no restriction on short-term capital gain. So suppose example 2, I have short-term capital loss of 3 lakhs. Then there is another short-term capital gain. It can be of 111A and this can be of general provisions, no problem. Of say, it can be of different rates also, no problem. 4 lakhs. And then there is long-term capital gain of I know the dates have been changed. I'm taking it off before July wala. ठीक है. Can I adjust it? Answer is yes. But with what? With this or with this or with either of these? And either of these, then किसके साथ? Students, बताओ 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 quickly please. Didi says STCG. Vignesh, Pratik, what is your stand on this? Come on, fly your brains. See, without Answer, I'm not moving. First against STCG and then LDCG. अगर सारा प्रतीक I will adjust it with STCG तो कुछ बचेगा ही नहीं. So short-term capital loss has no problem. वो short-term capital loss is very sweet. It can be adjusted with my long-term capital gain also, with my short-term capital gain also, right? So short-term capital loss में there is no issue. So यहाँ पे 3 lakh can be adjusted with either of 4 or 2. It is my choice. First of all, I told you there is no such restriction. But 3 को first of all मैं सबसे पहले 2 lakh से adjust करूंगी. Why? Because this is LTCG which is taxed at 20%. So जितना 20% वाला income कम हो जाएगा, whereas STCG is taxed at 15%, which is at the lower rate. So पहले 20% वाले income को I will remove ना, because that is beneficial for me. So पहले 3 lakh को I will adjust it with 2 lakhs. फिर बचा 1 lakh, which I will adjust it from this 4 lakhs. So the net result in short-term capital gain here in the total capital gain segment would be short-term capital gain taxed at 15% for 3 lakhs. ऐसा much? Got it? देखो ये बेसिक है, बट क्योंकि हम एसएससी की बेनिफिशियल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से वी हैव टू अप्लाई. अब एक और सिचुएशन लेते हैं. एग्जाम्पल 3 लेते हैं, ठीक है. सो नाउ वी हैव शॉर्ट टर्म कैपिटल लॉस ऑफ 3 lakhs, 15% शॉर्ट टर्म कैपिटल गेन ऑफ 5 lakhs कर देते हैं, 20% long term capital gain, and ये वाला short term capital loss is slab rate. Still it does not matter at all. Long term capital gain is there, 20% वाला is there of 4 lakhs, ठीक है. Then long term capital gain 10% वाला is there, 112A वाला. रेट्स में अभी सारे जुलाई से पहले वाले ले रही हूँ, ओके. ऑफ से 3 lakhs, ये तो हो गया, सॉरी. Relax. And another, there is a long-term capital loss also of 20% of say 6 lakhs. Now tell me how the adjustments would happen. What is the final result? You cannot say this is tax planning. Tax planning is when before having an income, you are seeing how those income will go. This is a general provisions. You are basically, this is optimum utilization of law provisions. Nothing else. Abhi, I told you at the beginning that aggregation is a more of a legal concept which has to be utilized properly. तो 6 की जगह और बढ़ा दूं थोड़ा सा, तभी it would be more better. 7 lakhs का लॉस कर देते हैं, ठीक है.
Ma'am, in this, I think first we set off the LTCL 7 lakh, as it cannot set off against any other head.
Any
So
other income, any
any
other
other
source also.
income. Okay. Then we first this 4 lakh and 2 lakh income, the 7 lakh we will set off and 1 lakh we will carry forward. And the STCL 3 lakh we will set off against rupees 5 lakh.
Very good. Very good. Rightly said. So even if you have a chance to set off this ST sale of 3 lakhs with 20% LTCG and 10%, but why would you do that? Why would you do that? Because already there is a loss of long-term capital loss to itna restricted है, which can be only be adjusted with long-term capital gain. So पहले जो restricted वाले losses है, first adjust it with that ना. So I will adjust long-term capital loss with my long-term capital gains first. So यहाँ पे सारे gains खत्म हो गए and 1 lakh has to be finish हो गए. 1 lakh is still there to be carry forwarded. ठीक है? One thing. And then 3 lakh को 5 lakh से set off किया. And 2 lakh is the now taxable capital gain at 15%. Even if I have a choice, but this is the most optimum situation. You will not carry forward it next year because you never know okay, whether you'll have a loss or not, or whether you'll have an income or not next year, specifically when we talk about capital gain, which is very subjective. And secondly, then losses have a restricted time period to be carried forwarded. They would unnecessarily be lapsed. So first, always pick up those tricky adjustments, वो adjustments उठाओ जो restricted है, and then you go ahead. Now suppose instead of 7 lakhs, very good, Jini. Instead of 7 lakhs here, this loss, if would be of, say, 3 lakhs. Then, kisse you will adjust first? Or say, let's make it 3,50,000. This time I want Vignesh or Prateek or anyone else to answer, please. Vignesh, would you like to answer? Good, Kriti, very good. So first of all, I will adjust this 3,50,000 with the highest one, which is 35% one, and that's it. Remaining I would go taxable. ठीक है. So पहले इससे adjust किया. अब क्या balance बचा? 50,000 of this is left. 2 lakh of this is left. And 5 lakh of this is still left. Now 3 lakh को first of all I will adjust it with this 50,000 again क्योंकि मेरा 20% LTCG पूरा final हो जाएगा. Right? So ये भी अब खत्म हो गया and then 2,50,000 को मैं I'll adjust it with 5 lakhs. So now 250 of this is left. 2 lakhs of this is left. Because the contention of set off of losses is what is most beneficial to the SIC. So now this would be taxed at 15%. This would be taxed at 10% in excess of 1 lakh. So sorted. Okay, perfect. Perfectly clear, Ginny?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I have forgot the chat box and waiting for the speaker to answer.
No problem. As which way you are comfortable.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So all answers are accepted, but at the same time, you have to see which is more beneficial to the SSE. That approach also has to be considered and taken. So as I was telling you about the intra-head adjustments, speculative business loss can only be adjusted with speculative business income. But that does not mean that non-speculative business loss cannot be adjusted with speculative business income. Loss को restrictions हैं of adjustment. Income can be adjusted. Now, suppose I have manufacturing business a loss of 5 lakhs and I have speculative business income of 10 lakhs or 8 lakhs. I can adjust it. Business loss, speculative business loss को नहीं कर सकती, but income को तो I can utilize for set off. ठीक है? ऐसे ही long term capital loss को I cannot set off, but long term capital gain को I can utilize to adjust it with short term capital loss. Correct? So whenever we are talking about the restrictions, it is from the perspective of losses. Last here is about restriction is about owning and maintaining resources. It's a cash is an income under the head other sources. If you are into a business of owning and maintaining resources, इसमें generally loss comes. Loss not from the winnings and loss of the runnings of the horses, but loss from the maintaining the horses, because horse को maintain करने के लिए a lot of expense goes, right? अगर वो loss है, it can be adjusted only with income of owning and maintaining resources. ठीक है? It can be adjusted only with the income of owning and maintaining race horses. So these are your intra-head adjustment के restrictions. Now, once intra-head adjustment restrictions are done, then we will move ahead to inter-head adjustments. यानी अब उस head का maybe resultant is loss. Now, once the head is resulting in loss, particular head, then we'll go to different heads. Then we'll go to different heads. अब एक बारी guys, अगर intra-head adjustment is not allowed, then further inter-head would not come. अगर specified business को I cannot adjust it with specified business के losses को I cannot adjust it with non-specified business income. It is bound to be carry forwarded. I will not adjust it with house property income because वो within head ही allowed नहीं है, तो head के बाहर कैसे allowed होगा? Okay?
मैम
Yes.
यहाँ पर जो आपने अभी बताया ओनिंग एंड मेंटेनिंग हॉर्सेस loss and it will be set off against only the same income. If the income is from if the business person who is doing this business यानी कि वो अपने घोड़ों को रेस करवाता है, उससे इनकम उसको अराइज होती है, उसको भी इसी में कंसीडर करेंगे या फिर वो अलग है?
वो बिजनेस, हाँ, वो यही उसमें आपका कैजुअल इनकम में ही आता है. सपोज आई एम मेंटेनिंग हॉर्सेस, ठीक है, बेसिकली हॉर्स जो विन करते हैं उसका विनिंग आपको मिल रहा है, ठीक है. यूर ओनिंग एंड मेंटेनिंग हॉर्सेस. अगर आप उस पर सट्टा लगा रहे हो हॉर्सेस पे, दैट इज गैम्बलिंग. Many people put their bet on horses. That is not owning and maintaining resources. That is betting, and that is equal to gambling. And we are talking about people who own a horse which is run in the business, and if as an owner you get some prize money, वो वाले horses को. Own horses को, they are, since the runners, which are basically the main prize winning horses, you spend a lot of money to maintain them, right? तो वो वाला अब इनकम कुछ आई नहीं उनसे, और आपको मेंटेनेंस के बहुत सारे लॉसेस हैं, so the net result would be generally losses. उन losses को you can only adjust it when you will have income from maybe getting that horse win in a race, उससे you can adjust it, ठीक है, not the betting वाला income. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Clear?
Yes, sir, clear. Oh, yes, ma'am.
ठीक है. So now we will move ahead to your this particular thing, which is your inter-head adjustment. Okay. So now let's start with your inter-head adjustment, which is covered under section 71. Section 70 talks about intra-head adjustment. Section 71 talks about inter-head adjustment. And as I was telling कि अगर intra-head restrictions हैं तो inter-head restrictions हैं ही हैं. That means long-term capital loss you cannot adjust it with any income. Similarly, specified business loss you cannot adjust it with any income. Similarly, speculative business loss you cannot adjust it with any income. And similarly, loss from owning and maintaining resources you cannot adjust it with any income. But besides that, there are certain exceptions when it comes to your losses otherwise. First of all, business loss cannot be set off against salary income. Business losses cannot be set off against salary income. This is cut and clear. No matter whichever loss I'm talking about. Suppose I have a manufacturing business and वहां से मेरे को 10 lakhs का loss है, but I have a salary income of say 15 lakhs. I cannot adjust it. I cannot adjust it ever. Never ever business losses are allowed to be adjusted with the salary income. Number one. Number two, short-term capital loss we saw can be adjusted with long-term capital gain and short-term capital gain, but short-term capital loss is only adjusted in the capital gain income only under the capital gain income. I cannot adjust a short-term capital loss with any other income. So long-term loss only with long-term income, short-term loss with either long-term and short-term capital gain income, but net result if is of short-term loss, it cannot be adjusted with any other income. और वर्चुअल डिजिटल एसेट से तो लॉस होते तो इट इज नॉट अलाउड टू बी सेट ऑफ एनीवे. Speculation loss or specified loss also you cannot set off. और वही the SSC has opted for this regime of 115 BAC, BAB, etc. Set off or carry forward of unabsorbed depreciation losses shall not be allowed if such loss or depreciation are attributable to deductions which are not allowed for opting on such concessional regimes. Okay. Last is about house property. So जहाँ पे net result of computation of income is under the head house property is a loss, and assessee has income taxable under any head of income. It can be PGBP, it can be salary, it can be other sources. The maximum loss which can be adjusted is up to 2 lakhs. 2 lakhs under the head of house property can be set off during the year against any income taxable under any head. The unabsorbed loss is then carry forwarded. Suppose I have house property 1 जिसमें से 4 lakhs 5 lakhs का loss है, and then there is house property 2 जिसमें 1 lakh का income है. ठीक है, एडजस्ट करा, नेट रिजल्ट कितना हुआ हाउस प्रॉपर्टी में 4 lakhs का लॉस. Now maximum 2 lakhs only can be adjusted with any head. Remaining 2 lakhs would be carry forwarded. But if you have taken 115 BAC, the total income of an assessee who has taken or opted for the concessional tax regime or who has not opted out of the concessional tax regime under 115 BAC is to be computed without set off of any loss under the house property income. तो house property का loss किसी head से allowed ही नहीं है, वो हमेशा only it would be carry forwarded and adjusted within the same head. So please be very, very, very careful when we're talking about house property losses. Agar 115 BAC, I'll write it down. So house property loss का inter head restrictions क्या है? Inter head मतलब after within different heads क्या है? If 115 BAC opted, मतलब 115 BAC taken and or opted out of 115 BAC. Spelling there. If 115 BAC is opted, that is you're not opting out, then no inter head adjustment. And if you have opted out, that is now you're paying tax as per old regime, maximum 2 lakhs with any head. With any head. Sorted? Clear? This is your इंटर हेड एडजस्टमेंट के केसेस। और उसके अलावा वो चीज तो सेम रहती ही है दैट यू कैन नॉट एडजस्ट द लॉसेस विद अनडिस्क्लोज्ड इनकम, गैम्बलिंग एक्टिविटीज, अनएक्सप्लेन्ड इनकम, virtual digital income, trust institution income, crossword, online games, etc. In सबसे you cannot adjust any loss, or neither you can adjust the losses of these with any income. ठीक है, so that is about your inter-head adjustment. Does anyone has any doubt? Clear? So inter-head also clear, inter-head also clear. Now we'll move on to the carry forward provisions. I don't think so today we should. We can start with the carry forward provisions क्योंकि छोटा मोटा अगर कैपिटल गेन बता भी दिया या हाउस प्रॉपर्टी बता भी दिया, it would be equal to nothing. So क्या है? Now the story is that once you first made the intra-head adjustment, then you made the inter-head adjustment. Still there can be losses. Intra-head में restrictions के बाद the losses which are there, restrictions on which they are being applied directly next year चले जाते हैं for carry forward. But if the net result of the head is loss, you can make an inter-head adjustment. But still, if there is still losses, all of these now is carry forwarded. And now once they get carry forwarded, अभी तक क्या था? Intra head के लिए there was section 70, inter head के लिए there was section 71. Once they are carry forwarded, friends, each loss का there is a separate section. Like say 71B is for house property loss adjustment. Once how the carry forward house property loss will apply. Then section 72 is for normal business loss adjustments. Section 73 is how carry forward of specified business losses would apply. Section 74 is how carry forwarded capital gain would apply. So now once they are carry forwarded, each section is there separately to define the provisions in relation to carry forward and set off of those losses. अभी तक तो common adjustments थी. Now the provisions of carry forward will apply. So provisions of carry forward will start in the next class afresh. We will take 1 hour and finish it up, or 1.5 hour and finish it up, and then we will start with your very much awaited section, which is deductions. Deductions you will enjoy a lot, pretty good, pretty easy, not much changes also this year, छोटे मोटे हैं, otherwise it is very easy and मजा आता है deductions करने में because in real life also it helps. ठीक है, so see you all in the next class. If there is any doubt अभी आज की क्लास में I can pick it up. All understood, all clear अभी तक? And I don't think so clubbing फिर से revise करने का जरूरत पड़ेगा. Just make that chart and it would be good to go. Very good question, Kriti. Loss from any other head can be adjusted with short-term capital gain or long-term capital gain? Definitely. Suppose I have a business loss, I can adjust it with long-term capital gain. Definitely. Restrictions are always on losses to be adjusted, not restrictions on income to be adjusted with those particular losses or not particular gains. Very good. I too enjoy you teaching you all. So see you in the next class Tuesday. Before that, have a good weekend and do study well. All the best. Good night. Yes, session over. Thank you. Good night.